The execution channel was never my preferred entertainment. Too gaudy, too self-important, too predictable. But here I was, nursing my third glass of Curolean firewater at the grimmiest bar in Sector 9, watching along with every other miserable creature in the galaxy as the Grand Hegemony prepared to execute another rebel. "Turn it up, Pazlak," shouted a burly Vexturian from the corner booth. The bartender, a six-armed Curolean with skin like polished bronze, grumbled but obliged. "Citizens of the eternal hegemony," boomed the announcer, his voice dripping with artificial enthusiasm. "Today we witness justice against the enemies of our glorious empire." I snorted into my drink. Justice, right. The prun Dax beside me, a methane breather with translucent skin and compound eyes, swiveled one eye stalk in my direction. "Be careful, Inspector Morvok. Those sound dangerously like treasonous thoughts." "Oh, please, Dextor," I replied, keeping my voice low. "We both know this isn't justice. It's theater. And what expensive theater it was. The hegemony spared no expense on their executions. Gleaming ceremonial chambers, elaborate uniforms for the executioners, dramatic music composed specifically for each death. All broadcast across 50,000 star systems in real time. Mandatory viewing, of course. Today's main attraction: a human female. The image on screen showed her being led into the execution chamber by 4 Praetorian guards, their ceremonial armor polished to a mirror shine. The human looked absurdly small between them, hardly reaching their shoulders. "Prisoner 773,219, designation Hannah Reeves," the announcer proclaimed. "Convicted of sabotage, espionage, and incitement to rebellion against the Grand Hegemony." I leaned forward despite myself. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. The hegemony had quarantined their home system centuries ago, declaring them a volatile species with dangerous evolutionary tendencies. Most citizens of the Empire had never seen one in the flesh. "Quite small, isn't she?" Dextor observed. "Hard to believe the hegemony considers humans such a threat." "Size isn't everything," I muttered, studying the prisoner. Hannah Reeves was indeed small, even for a human. Pale skin, hair the color of solar flares, eyes like twin emeralds. Young, too, couldn't be more than 25 standard cycles. But there was something in her posture, a coiled tension, that reminded me of a compression spring. Small, yes, but storing tremendous potential energy. "The accused has refused the mercy option," the announcer continued, sounding vaguely disappointed. The mercy option was the hegemony's idea of benevolence, a quick death in exchange for a public confession and apology. Few took it. The guards secured Hannah Reeves to the execution platform. The chamber's curved walls gleamed with precious metals and jewels, another reminder of the hegemony's boundless wealth and power. Emperor Vexmora himself watched from a private viewing box, his massive form draped in royal vestments. "The sentence will be carried out via molecular disassembly," the announcer declared. "By order of His Eternal Magnificence, Emperor Vexmora, this execution is being broadcast on all frequencies throughout hegemony space and beyond, that all may witness the price of rebellion." I frowned. All frequencies? That violated basic security protocols. Execution broadcasts were normally restricted to official hegemony channels, heavily encrypted to prevent tampering. "Is that standard procedure?" I asked Dextor, who worked in communications. "Definitely not," he replied, all 3 eye stalks now focused on the screen. "That's extremely unusual." On screen, the executioner, a massive Krell with ceremonial scarification across his scaled face, approached Hannah Reeves. "Do you have any final words, human?" The bar fell silent. Final words were often the most entertaining part of executions. Some prisoners begged. Some cursed. Some delivered impassioned speeches cut short by the executioner. Hannah Reeves looked directly into the camera. Her expression was serene? No, that wasn't quite right. Satisfied. Like someone who has just completed a difficult task. 27 minutes, she said, her voice clear and steady. The executioner tilted his massive head. 27 minutes until what, Rebel? Her lips curved into a slight smile. 27 minutes until your empire falls. Laughter rippled through the bar. Even I couldn't help a sardonic chuckle. The Grand Hegemony had ruled for over 12,000 years. It controlled 70% of the known galaxy. Its military might was unmatched, its technological superiority absolute. Old words from a species that hasn't even mastered efficient faster than light travel, someone called out. The executioners seemed equally amused. The hegemony has endured for 12 millennia, human. It will endure for 12 more after you are dust. Hannah Reeves simply shrugged. We will see. Then the disassembly beam activated. It was designed to be excruciating, breaking molecular bonds slowly, ensuring maximum pain before death. Most prisoners screamed. Hannah Reeves did not. The smile never left her face as her body gradually disintegrated into a fine mist of particles. I checked the time, 14:23 Standard Galactic Time. 27 minutes would be 14:50. Another drink? The bartender asked, all 6 arms busy serving the suddenly festive crowd. I'm good, I replied, an uneasy feeling settling in my gut. Something about the human's confidence had unsettled me. I'd been an inspector for the Hegemony Security Bureau for 30 cycles. I'd interrogated rebels, terrorists, and dissidents from 100 species. I knew when someone was bluffing. Hannah Reeves had not been bluffing. My secure communicator buzzed. I frowned. I wasn't on duty for another rotation. Inspector Morvac, I answered, stepping away from the bar. Report to Central Command immediately, barked my superior, Director Kin Lor. Emergency Protocol Omega-7. My blood ran cold. Omega-7 was reserved for existential threats to hegemony security. What's happening? I asked. Just get here, Morvac. Now. The communication cut off abruptly. I looked at my chronometer, 14:28. 5 minutes had passed since the execution. 22 minutes remaining. Central Command was chaos when I arrived. Security personnel rushed between terminals. Warning lights flashed on every surface. The air was thick with fear, a scent my species could literally detect. Director Kuhn-Lor spotted me and hurried over, his usually immaculate uniform disheveled. Morvac. Good you are here. What's happening, Director? His facial tentacles writhed with agitation. We are under attack. Every system simultaneously. The defense grids failing. Encryption collapsing. Communication networks compromised. By whom? The Outer Colonies? The Free Worlds Alliance? That's just it, there's no attacker. Kin-Lor hissed. No ships, no infiltration teams, no energy signatures. Our systems are just failing, turning against us. I checked the time, 14:35. 12 minutes since the execution. When did this start? I asked, already suspecting the answer. Immediately after the human's execution, Kin-Lor confirmed. At first we thought it was coincidence, but an alarm blared, cutting him off. A junior officer rushed over. The director. The banking system has crashed. All hegemony financial institutions are reporting total data corruption. Another officer called out, military fleet coordination systems failing. Ships are reporting navigation systems malfunctions throughout hegemony space. And another, life support systems on habitation stations in sectors 3 through 17 are going offline. Kuhn-Lor's facial tentacles went limp with shock. This is impossible. Our systems have redundancies, fail-safes, isolation protocols. I moved to the nearest terminal and accessed the security logs. What I saw chilled me to the core. Through the failing systems, a single message repeated in human language. Hannah Reeves, remember the name. Director, I said slowly. The human knew this would happen. That's absurd. She was just a saboteur. A minor rebel. Was she? I pulled up her file, examining it with new eyes. Hannah Reeves. No birth record in human databases. No employment history. no recorded existence until 3 years ago. She appeared out of nowhere. Kinlor stared at me, understanding dawning in his multifaceted eyes. You are saying she was what? A plant? A suicide operative? I'm saying we should take her threat very seriously. I checked my chronometer, 14:41. 18 minutes gone. 9 minutes remaining. The main view screen flickered suddenly. The hegemony crest vanished, replaced by Hannah Reeves' face. Not as she had appeared in the execution chamber, but from an earlier recording. "Hello, hegemony," she said pleasantly. "If you are seeing this, I'm already dead. That's fine. I volunteered for this mission knowing the risks." The command center fell silent, all eyes fixed on the screen. "You are wondering what's happening to your precious empire," Hannah continued. The short answer? It's collapsing. Just like my molecules did in your fancy execution chamber. Cut the transmission. Kinlor shouted. "We can't, sir," a communications officer replied. "It's on every channel, every screen, hegemony-wide." Hannah's recorded image smiled, that same unnerving smile from the execution chamber. "For centuries, humanity has watched your hegemony from our quarantined corner of the galaxy. We have studied you, learned your weaknesses, and your greatest weakness is your arrogance." The building shook. Through the viewports, I could see hegemony warships falling from orbit, their engines dead. "Your systems are so advanced, so superior to primitive human technology, that you never imagined we might understand them better than you do," Hannah explained. "Every neural interface, every quantum node, every security protocol, they all share the same fundamental architecture. An architecture with a fatal flaw." I glanced at my chronometer, 14:46. 23 minutes since the execution. 4 minutes remaining. "The execution broadcast was the delivery system," Hannah continued. "As by transmitting on all frequencies, including unsecured ones, you created the perfect vector. My death triggered a quantum resonance cascade throughout your network. Your own executioner activated the sequence that doomed your empire." Another tremor shook the command center, stronger this time. Ceiling panels crashed down. Officers scrambled for cover. "We could have fought you conventionally," Hannah said. "Built warships, raised armies. But your empire spans 50,000 star systems. A conventional war would have cost trillions of lives. This way is cleaner. Your weapons are useless. Your ships are dead in space. Your economy is in ruins." Kinlor grabbed my arm, his grip painful. "Can we stop it? Isolate critical systems?" I shook my head. "The cascade is designed to exploit the interconnectedness of hegemony systems. There is no isolation now." "Why?" Kinlor whispered. "Why would they do this?" As if hearing him, Hannah answered. "You are wondering why. It's simple. 8 years ago, your hegemony declared the human colony on Proxima Centauri a quarantine violation and sterilized the planet. 7 million human lives erased. That colony was my home. Those people were my family." Her green eyes seemed to stare directly at me through the screen. "Sometimes justice requires sacrifice." 27 minutes, Hannah said. "That's how long it takes for the quantum cascade to reach critical mass. That's how long your hegemony has left. Not bad for a primitive species, is it?" I looked at my chronometer one last time, 14:50. 27 minutes exactly since Hannah Reeves's execution. The screen went black. Then every light, every system, every piece of hegemony technology within sight shut down simultaneously. In the sudden darkness, I heard Kinlor whisper, "How? How could one human do this to us?" Through the viewport, I watched as the massive imperial palace, the jewel of our civilization, built to stand for eternity, began to crumble and fall. "We underestimated them," I said simply. "That was our fatal mistake." The emergency lights activated, casting the command center in a dim red glow. Outside, I could hear explosions, screams, the sound of a civilization collapsing. "What do we do now?" Kinlor asked, his voice hollow. I didn't have an answer. The grand hegemony, the only government I had ever known, the empire I had served loyally for 3 decades, was dying around me. All because of one human girl who had smiled as she faced death, knowing she had already won. Morvac, a junior officer, called out, voice trembling. "We are getting reports from the outer sectors. The subjugated worlds, they are rising up. Coordinated rebellions on thousands of planets simultaneously." Of course they were. With hegemony systems down, the oppressed species of the galaxy would seize their chance for freedom. And someone had coordinated them. This wasn't just a technological attack, it was a revolution. She wasn't working alone, I realized. This was planned meticulously. My communicator buzzed. Somehow it was still working, perhaps operating on a frequency the Cascade hadn't targeted. The voice that came through was unfamiliar, speaking accented but clear Galactic standard. "Inspector Morvac? This is Captain Luna Reeves of the Human Liberation Fleet. I believe you have met my sister." I froze. "Your sister is dead." "Yes," the human replied, her voice steady despite the emotion I could hear beneath it. "She knew she would die. She volunteered anyway." "Why are you contacting me?" "Because according to our intelligence, you are one of the few decent officials in the Hegemony Security Bureau. You have opposed torture, advocated for prisoner rights, questioned unjust policies." I said nothing. Those things were true, but they hadn't been enough. I'd still served the system. "We are offering amnesty to hegemony officials who didn't participate in war crimes," Luna continued. "Those willing to help with the transition to a new galactic governance." "What kind of governance?" I asked. "A federation of equals. No species subjugating another. No more executions broadcast as entertainment." Through the viewport, I watched as another hegemony warship crashed into the capital city's central district. The symbol of our power and dominance, reduced to burning wreckage in minutes. "Why should I help you?" I asked. "Because you know we have won," Luna replied simply. "The hegemony is finished. It can't be saved. But millions of innocent lives can be if people like you make the right choice now." She was right. The hegemony was beyond saving. Whatever the humans had unleashed had been too thorough, too devastating. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "There's a refugee crisis developing in the capital," Luna said. "Hegemony officials are fleeing, leaving civilians trapped. You know the evacuation protocols, the secure routes, and help get people to safety. It was the least I could do. I will try." "One more thing," Inspector Luna said, her voice hardening. "Remember my sister's name." "Hannah Reeves," I said. "How could I forget?" The communication ended. I turned to Kin Lor and the remaining officers, all looking to me for direction. "The hegemony is finished," I told them bluntly. "We have a choice: die with it, or help save who we can." I didn't wait for their response. I headed for the exit, already planning evacuation routes in my head. Behind me I heard Kin Lor ask, to no one in particular, how could one human bring down an empire that stood for 12,000 years? The answer was simple, though I didn't say it aloud, because she was willing to die for what she believed in. Because sometimes the most dangerous weapon in the universe isn't a warship or a death ray. It's sacrifice. As I stepped out into the chaos of a falling empire, I wondered what would rise from its ashes. And I found myself hoping that whatever came next would be worthy of Hannah Reeves's sacrifice. The Grand Hegemony had executed a human girl on live broadcast. 27 minutes later, their empire fell. The capital city burned for 3 days straight. 3 days of screams and sirens. 3 days of desperate evacuation efforts. 3 days where the mighty hegemony, conqueror of 50,000 star systems, subjugator of countless species, transformed from an unstoppable force into a cautionary tale. "Well, this is certainly not how I expected to spend my retirement years," I muttered, helping a group of Trill-Vari children onto an evacuation shuttle. Their bioluminescent skin flickered with fear, but they remained admirably quiet. It had been 8 days since Hannah Reeves smiled her way into galactic history. 8 days of organized chaos as the power structures of the hegemony crumbled like sand castles under a rising tide. 8 days since I'd chosen to help with evacuation efforts rather than flee with the other officials. "Is that the last group from Sector 12? Asked Talmora, a former entertainment administrator who'd volunteered to help. Her species was known for their logical thinking under pressure, a valuable trait in our current predicament. "Yes," I confirmed, sealing the shuttle doors. "That's nearly 7,000 civilians evacuated from the government district. And where exactly are we sending them?" Talmora asked, her 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a sign of skepticism. It was a fair question. With hegemony control collapsing across the galaxy, safe havens were in short supply. The irony wasn't lost on me. For centuries, the hegemony had prevented its citizens from traveling freely between systems, claiming it was for security purposes. In reality, it had been about control. Now that control was gone, and so were the established evacuation protocols. "The Human Liberation Forces have established refugee processing centers on Nevera Prime," I explained. "They are guaranteeing safe passage and humanitarian aid to all non-combatants." Talmora's mouth tentacles curled in surprise. "And you trust them? After what they did?" I watched as the shuttle lifted off, joining a stream of vessels fleeing the dying capital. "Oddly enough, I do. They could have bombed us into oblivion once our defenses fell. Instead, they are helping evacuate civilians." My communicator buzzed one of the few pieces of technology still functioning after the quantum cascade. The humans had apparently designed their attack to spare essential life support and evacuation systems. Another sign that this hadn't been mere revenge, but a calculated operation with clear objectives. "Inspector Morvac," I answered. "Inspector, this is Captain Luna Reeves." The human's voice was strained with exhaustion. "We have got a situation at the Central Archives that requires your expertise." "Interesting." The Central Archives contained the collected knowledge of the hegemony, historical records, scientific research, cultural artifacts. In the wrong hands, that information could be dangerous. "I will be there in 20 minutes, I promised. The streets of the capital were almost unrecognizable. The immaculate boulevards where hegemony elite once paraded were now filled with debris and abandoned vehicles. The imposing statues of Emperor Vex Mora had been toppled, their golden fragments scattered across plazas like fallen stars. Yet amid the destruction, I noticed something unexpected: cooperation. Species that had been kept separated by hegemony segregation laws were working together. A group of massive Krell were using their strength to lift fallen structures, allowing trapped civilians to escape. The Vex Turian medics treated injuries without regard for species classifications. Prun Dax engineers jury-rigged power generators to maintain life support in damaged buildings. It was hopeful, and entirely contrary to what hegemony propaganda had claimed would happen if the natural order was disrupted. The Central Archives loomed ahead, its quantum glass dome miraculously intact, despite the destruction surrounding it. Armed humans in simple but effective combat gear guarded the entrance. They tensed as I approached. "Inspector Morvac," I identified myself. Captain Reeves requested my presence. One of the guards, a dark-skinned human with closely cropped hair, nodded and spoke into a communication device. After a moment, he gestured for me to follow him inside. The archive's main chamber was a vast rotunda filled with holographic data columns. Under normal circumstances, it would be bustling with scholars and researchers. Today, it contained a small team of humans and several former hegemony scientists working together at the central console. Captain Luna Reeves stood among them, instantly recognizable despite never having seen her before. She shared her sister's fiery hair and emerald eyes, though her face was harder, marked by old scars and new exhaustion. "Inspector," she greeted me with a curt nod. "Thank you for coming." "Captain," I replied, studying her. Up close, the resemblance to Hannah was striking. Same determined set to the jaw. Same intensity of focus. "What's the situation?" Luna gestured to the central console. We have discovered that the archive contains detailed files on biological weapons developed by hegemony scientists. Weapons specifically designed to target human physiology. That's not surprising, I admitted. The hegemony considered humans a potential threat for centuries. What is surprising, Luna continued, is that these weapons were never deployed, despite being fully developed and ready for production. That was indeed curious. The hegemony had never hesitated to use maximum force against perceived threats. Someone within the hegemony halted the deployment, Luna explained. We need to find out who and why. The files are encrypted with Security Bureau classification. That's why we need you. I approached the console, examining the encryption protocols. These are director-level security measures. I can access them, but it will leave an audit trail. Luna's expression hardened. That matters to you? Even now? Now. I met her gaze steadily. Old habits. But no, it doesn't matter anymore. I placed my hand on the biometric scanner and spoke my security clearance. The system, operating on emergency power, whirred to life. Files appeared on the holographic display: research reports, development timelines, deployment strategies. And at the end, a cancellation order. There, I pointed. Signed by Director Kinlaw? That couldn't be right. Kinlaw was a staunch hegemony loyalist. Why would he secretly halt a weapons program targeting humanity? I opened the attached justification document and began reading aloud. The project terminated due to unacceptable risk of cross-species contamination. Human biological responses to compound XR-17 demonstrated unforeseen adaptive capabilities that could potentially create a more virulent strain affecting non-target species. These... Luna leaned forward, frowning. He cancelled it because it might have backfired on non-humans? No, I said slowly, reading further. He cancelled it because humans might have adapted to it, becoming stronger. He writes here, test subjects demonstrated alarming evolutionary responses, developing antibodies at rates 300% faster than predicted. Continuing this line of research may inadvertently accelerate human adaptive capabilities. A startled laugh escaped Luna. He was afraid attacking us would make us more dangerous. Essentially, yes, I scrolled through more files. There's more. Communications between Kinlaw and a network of other officials across the hegemony. They have been quietly sabotaging anti-human initiatives for years. Luna stared at the files in disbelief. Why? Why would hegemony officials protect humans? The answer came from the entrance to the rotunda. Because some of us recognize the beginning of our end. Director Kinlaw stood there, his uniform tattered, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. But his eyes were clear and focused. Guards immediately raised their weapons. Luna signaled them to hold. Director, I acknowledged, surprised he had survived the chaos. You have some explaining to do. Kinlaw approached slowly, hands visible. Indeed I do, Morvak. To both of you. Luna crossed her arms, skepticism radiating from her posture. You have been sabotaging your own government's anti-human initiatives. Not just me. Dozens of us across different departments and sectors. Kinlaw's facial tentacles twitched a sign of extreme stress in his species. We called ourselves the Foresight Cadre. Foresight about what? I asked. About the inevitable. Kinlaw gestured to the destruction visible through the archive's dome. The fall. Empires always fall, Inspector. History is quite clear on that point. He approached the console and, with Luna's cautious permission, brought up historical files. The hegemony conquered or destroyed every species it encountered except humans. Your quarantine was unique. Do you know why? Luna shook her head. Because every simulation predicted that direct conflict with humanity would eventually result in hegemony defeat, Kinlaw explained. Not immediately. Perhaps not for centuries. But eventually. Your species adapts too quickly, cooperates too effectively under pressure, and holds grudges too long. I stared at my former superior with new eyes. You knew this would happen. Not specifically this, Kunlor clarified. We never anticipated the quantum cascade. But we knew something would eventually trigger the fall. So we prepared. Prepared how? Luna demanded. By preserving what was worth saving. Knowledge, art, cultural artifacts, and by establishing networks that could help rebuild after the collapse. He looked directly at Luna. We knew the hegemony needed to end. We just hoped for a gentler landing. A bitter laugh escaped Luna. Gentler than executing my sister on live broadcast, Kunlor's tentacles drooped with genuine regret. We tried to prevent her capture. One of our agents warned your network about the trap, but the message arrived too late. By then, Hannah had already volunteered for the mission. The revelation hung in the air between us. If true, it meant the Foresight cadre had been working with human resistance networks. It meant Kunlor had been playing a double game for years, perhaps decades. Can you prove any of this? I asked. Kunlor nodded. Access file Omega Sunset 731. My personal archive. I entered the commands. The holographic display filled with years of correspondence, secret directives, hidden resource allocations, evidence of a conspiracy not to preserve the hegemony, but to ensure its fall would not take the entire galaxy with it. Luna studied the files, her expression shifting from suspicion to cautious acceptance. If you are telling the truth, your cadre might be useful in the transition period. That was always our intention, Kunlor said simply. A guard rushed into the rotunda. Captain, urgent communication from Admiral Tanner. A hegemony battle fleet has just emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the system. Luna's expression hardened. I thought all hegemony ships were disabled by the cascade. Deep space fleets operating on isolated systems might have been shielded, I suggested. If they were running on independent power and navigation, they could have survived. How many ships? Luna demanded. 17 capital ships, including the dreadnought Vex Mora's Fist, the guard reported. Even I felt a chill at that news. Vex Mora's Fist was the hegemony's most powerful warship, capable of reducing an entire planet to molten slag. They will try to retake the capital, Kunlor predicted, or destroy it if they can't. Luna activated her communicator. Admiral, this is Reeves. What's our status? A gruff voice responded. Our fleet is engaging, Captain, but we are outgunned. That dreadnought alone carries enough firepower to obliterate our forces. We need a miracle or an evacuation. Luna's face showed no fear, only calculated determination, so like her sister's expression before execution. How long can you hold them? 1 hour. Maybe 2. Do what you can. Reeves out. She turned to us. We need options. Fast. Kunlor stepped forward. I might have one. The dreadnought uses a centralized command system. If we could transmit a targeted version of your quantum cascade directly to its network. Impossible, I interrupted. After what happened, they will have completely isolated their systems. No external transmissions would be accepted. Unless they came from a verified Hegemony Security Bureau director, Kunlor countered, looking at me pointedly. I understood immediately. You want to use my security credentials to trick them into accepting a transmission. Precisely. Luna looked between us. Would that work? Possibly, I admitted. But we'd need to modify the original Cascade code to target just the Dreadnought systems, not the entire fleet. And we'd need someone who understands how the code works. I can help with that, said a new voice from the entrance. We turned to see a human male with features that immediately marked him as related to the Reeves sisters. Same red hair, though shot through with gray. Same green eyes, though one was replaced by a cybernetic implant. This is Director Thomas Reeves, Luna explained, my father, and the architect of the quantum cascade. The older human approached, walking with a slight limp. The original code was designed to propagate through networked systems. We can modify it to contain itself to a single target. But we will need access to a hegemony transmission array powerful enough to reach the fleet. The Imperial communication spire is still intact, Kyun Lor suggested. Its emergency systems should be operational. Then what are we waiting for? Luna asked. Let's move. As we hurried through the ruined streets toward the communication spire, I found myself alongside Thomas Reeves. Your daughters, I said quietly. They are remarkable. A sad smile crossed his weathered face. Yes, they are. Were. Hannah knew she wouldn't survive, I observed. Yet she volunteered anyway. She insisted, Thomas confirmed, pain evident in his voice, and said someone had to be the trigger, and it might as well be her. She was always the bravest of us. The communication spire loomed ahead, its needle-like structure reaching toward the stars. Once it had broadcast the Emperor's pronouncements across 50,000 worlds. Now it would serve a different purpose. We worked quickly. Thomas and his team modified the cascade code while Kyun Lor and I prepared the transmission systems. Luna coordinated with her fleet, buying us precious time. Ready, Thomas announced finally. Once transmitted, the cascade will target the Dreadnought's command systems. It should spread through their network in approximately 3 minutes. And then? Luna asked. And then they lose control of everything: weapons, engines, life support. Thomas's expression was grim, the same fate they dealt to countless worlds. I entered my security credentials into the system. Transmission ready. On your command, Captain. Luna hesitated, just for a moment. Will the crew have time to evacuate? Thomas nodded. Yes. Unlike what they did to your sister, we are giving them a chance. Luna took a deep breath. Transmit. I pressed the activation sequence. The modified cascade code flowed through the ancient hegemony communication systems, disguised as a priority command update. On the monitoring screens, we watched as the massive dreadnought Vexmora's fist received the transmission. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then, suddenly, the dreadnought's weapon ports closed. Its engines flared erratically. Emergency evacuation pods began launching from its hull. It's working, Kyun Lor breathed. The rest of the hegemony fleet, seeing their flagship disabled and crews evacuating, began to retreat. Without the dreadnought's firepower, they were unwilling to engage the human forces. Thomas Reeves watched the screens with quiet satisfaction. 27 minutes, he murmured. Just like Hannah said. I looked at him questioningly. The original cascade took 27 minutes to bring down an empire, he explained. And today, 27 minutes after we transmitted the modified code, the last real threat of that empire retreated. 3 months later, representatives from 200 formerly subjugated species gathered on Nevera Prime for the first Galactic Concordat. I attended as part of the transition team, helping dismantle what remained of hegemony power structures. The new alliance took shape gradually, not an empire, not a hegemony, but a federation of equals. Species that had been enemies under hegemony rule found common ground. Ancient rivalries gave way to cautious cooperation. And at the center of the Concordat's circular assembly chamber stood a simple monument, a holographic image of Hannah Reeves, smiling that knowing smile. Beneath it, a plaque in multiple languages read simply, "Sometimes justice requires sacrifice." Luna Reeves, now Ambassador Reeves, found me on the observation deck after the signing ceremony. Inspector, she greeted me. Or should I say counselor now? I shrugged, still uncomfortable with my new title. The Transitional Council had insisted I represent my sector, despite my hegemony past or perhaps because of it. Will it last? I asked, gesturing to the celebration below. This new alliance? Luna considered the question seriously. Nothing lasts forever. Not empires, not republics, not federations. But this has a better foundation than most. It's built on choice, not coercion. We stood in silence for a moment, watching the diverse species mingling below. Former enemies becoming cautious allies. Former slaves becoming equal partners. Your sister would be proud, I said finally. Luna's eyes glistened. Yes, she would. After a pause, she added, the Concordat has voted to establish an annual Remembrance Day. 27 minutes of galaxy-wide silence to honor those who sacrificed everything for freedom. I nodded, finding it appropriate. 27 minutes to remember how quickly everything can change. As I looked out at the stars, the same stars that had witnessed the rise and fall of the hegemony, I thought about Hannah Reeves, about her final smile as she faced death, knowing she had already won, about how one human girl had brought down an empire that had stood for 12,000 years, not with a massive fleet, not with overwhelming force, but with sacrifice and 27 minutes. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the galaxy.